When you think of the legacy of King Kong, you probably don't think of video games. I mean, he's certainly not the first Kong I would think of when I think of video games. In fact, he hasn't had a game for almost 20 years. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, is a pretty decent game from what I can remember. I was probably around 7 years old when I first played it. Honestly, in my opinion, I just don't feel like King Kong has been all that relevant for a while now. Aside from that brief moment, people were quickscoping his crotch for XP in Warzone. He's still getting movies because absolutely no franchise can die under the reign of modern Hollywood. But I don't really think anybody was asking for a new King Kong game. But if the potential for profit is there, you better believe our corporate overlords will squeeze it for every dime that it's worth. Skull Island: Rise of Kong was developed by Iguana Bee and published by Game Mill Entertainment. Iguana Bee seems to have some history as an indie developer, though they have landed some big licenses in the past, such as their 2020 game G.I. Joe Operation Blackout. While some of their games seem to be decent enough, most of them appear to be pretty stinky. Game Mill Entertainment is a publishing studio that seems to specialize in licensed schlock. They published Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, some terrible Avatar game that just came out, that garbage Nerf shooter, and a number of other licensed crapfests I really don't have the time to talk about. A mediocre developer and a publisher that'll throw money at literally anything that walks through their door is a surefire combination for a stellar video game, am I right? Right? As the name implies, this game focuses on the earlier parts of King Kong's life. Because if there's one thing that the giant rampaging monkey needed, it was an emotional backstory to make him just a little bit more relatable. It chronicles Kong's quest to defeat the sinister Gaul, the dinosaur that is responsible for killing Kong's parents when he was just a wee bab. The game revolves around finding just random prehistoric animals and doing what Kong does best: beating the absolute snot out of them. This is what you will do over and over and over again. Find some unsuspecting critters and just pummel them straight into the ground. Now you might immediately think, hey Dizrush, isn't this pretty much what every beat 'em up does? And to be honest, yeah. But the good ones do some different things to mix up the gameplay so it's not as stale as this. Mainly this is done through enemy variety. A good beat 'em up will throw all different kinds of enemies at you that have different strengths and weaknesses, requiring you to mix up attacks and combos or even combat styles to take them down effectively. This game pretty much has neither good enemy variety nor any kind of competent combo system. Enemies have practically no variety aside from how they look and how much health they have. There are maybe 2 enemies that I would say have actual unique mechanics. These worms that spit acid and this pterodactyl thing that has a screech attack. Otherwise, every other enemy just bum rushes you and spams basic melee attacks. There's also no system in place where you can string together fancy combos, let alone a combo counter to see just how many hits you've landed on enemies. There's all the pieces here of a competent fighting system, but none of it meshes together to create anything satisfying, let alone good. It uses the standard light attack, heavy attack system, as well as incorporating a number of other special attacks and abilities. Despite being a 2-ton ape, none of Kong's hits feel like they have any impact to them. Every attack just feels bogged down, while at the same time feeling entirely weightless. It just feels like you're slapping enemies with damp tissue paper. Kong does have a couple special moves, but they're activated with just a button press. Despite them being easy to use, activating them is really not worth it because they bring Kong to a standstill, in addition to leaving him completely open to attack for multiple seconds. The combat mechanics themselves just make this game torture to play, but when you actually have to sit down and fight another enemy, it just gets so much worse. Every time you're hit, Kong is stunned for about half a second. There's no recovery or iframes, so enemies can just gang up on you and string together attacks, trapping you in a stun lock and ripping away at your health. This happens a lot, mainly because enemies literally spawn from nowhere. You'll be in the middle of a fight and have 3 more monsters jump you like a few back alley thugs. Thankfully, you can completely ignore most enemies, except for when the game locks you into a fight, so you don't have to deal with this abysmal combat system all that much. Spamming light attacks is the most effective way to take care of enemies, largely because it's the most reliable attack that will actually hit those enemies. On top of this, other moves Kong has just don't deal as much damage. When I would hit fodder enemies with 2 light attacks and finish off with a heavy throw, it would just leave them stunned. But if I did a chain of 3 simple light attacks, they would die every time. Why would I bother even using other moves if they're all just worse than my most basic attack? The only other move that's even remotely effective is a finisher. When larger enemies become weak enough, you can instantly kill them with a press of a button. That is, when the button decides to actually work. Aside from quickly taking care of enemies, finishers are important because they heal Kong for a small amount. This is actually one of only 2 ways you can restore health, with the other being from collecting medicinal flowers scattered around levels. Unfortunately, these flowers don't respawn, so that makes health an extremely scarce resource. The level design in this game is a confusing enigma of being way too open and empty, while also feeling extremely tight and claustrophobic. For the most part, they're pretty linear, but they incorporate a number of open world exploration elements that just does not work well in execution at all. Good luck lasting more than 5 minutes before you get lost and end up circling back on yourself, and don't expect to rely on the in-game map for help because it's functionally worthless. It gives you no marker to show where you are, and even though it lists named regions for each area, the game doesn't tell you when you actually enter one of these named locations. All in all, the level design is a pitiful attempt to promote exploration that is further solidified in the game's core loop. Exploring the environment will lead you to special missions. Completing these awards skill points that you can use to upgrade Kong's abilities. I only found a whole 2 different mission types, one where you just defeat a certain number of enemies, and another where you have to destroy different nests scattered about the general area. So you can definitely expect to find $40 worth of variety inside of this game. In addition, there are a number of collectibles such as a mushroom, a bowl of food, and a baby skull? Yeah, no, it's totally fine. Yeah, when I think of King Kong, I totally think of baby skulls. Yeah, dead infants totally goes hand in hand with King Kong. Boss fights accentuate all of the worst parts of the game's combat. They rely on gimmicks and exploiting openings that just make the fights feel extremely slow and tedious. Literally, the entire second boss fight is just tossing rocks back and forth with a giant crab for 10 minutes. As your reward for completing a boss, you unlock a new ability in Kong's repertoire. What's baffling is that all of these abilities are taught to you in the opening segment of the game, making you believe these are all things you will be able to do from the outset. In reality, all of these abilities are stripped away as soon as the game actually starts, leaving Kong more useless than he already is. I can't understand the logic in taking the time to teach the player all of these different mechanics and moves and cool things you can do, but when the game really starts and you get into the meat of it, it's all just taken away. Why? Multiple times I hit obstacles I couldn't progress through, even though I thought I had the required ability, only to realize the game just took it away from me. With the design of the levels and the pacing of the game itself, I feel like the developers were attempting to do something in the style of a Metroidvania, but it's just executed extremely poorly. When you encounter obstacles you can't overcome, it's obvious you're supposed to come back once you've unlocked the required skill. However, locking these extra abilities until later just feels like a half-baked attempt to provide some level of character advancement they were too lazy to make on their own. Graphically, as you can probably already tell, the game is extremely lacking. I would say it's comparable to mobile games, but there are honestly quite a few mobile games that look way better than this. The majority of the textures are extremely low quality, making the whole game look muddy and just gross. Art direction went for more of a stylized look, probably an attempt to compensate for the terrible graphics, but it makes the whole game feel dated and amateurish. Kong's model is the only asset I would say looks okay. He's decently detailed and his facial animations do kind of look good, but what little quality the game has starts and ends with Kong's design. Map geometry is mediocre at best as well. You can even see where pieces of the environment are smushed together, like the whole thing was a map someone just pieced together in Halo Reach Forge. In the distance, you can also see the environment distort and shift into its normal position the closer you get to it. I guess this is just some kind of really shoddy level of detail system that the game uses to save on resources, but it feels like Kong is on the tail end of a drug trip. Must be something in those health flowers he keeps picking up. The cutscenes are probably the best thing about the game, but for all of the wrong reasons. They use all these weird out-of-place angles that make all of the cutscenes just feel disconnected from the actual game. Even the ones that are supposed to be emotional are just funny in how janky they are. There's even a cutscene that still has a placeholder image instead of any actual animation. If there's anything at all that's impressive about this game, it's probably just how little the developers seem to care about it. If just the quality of the game wasn't enough of an indicator, the actual name of the process for this game in Windows is just Monkey. That's just quality. And if they did it for the meme, good work, because it's actually kind of funny. I know a lot of people are drawing comparisons to that god-awful Gollum game that came out not too long ago, but I was fortunate enough not to have played that monstrosity. Personally, I haven't played licensed garbage this bad since the early Xbox 360 days. Just from the level of quality in this game, you can really tell not a single developer, executive manager, probably not even the janitor at Iguanabee's studio, gave two squirts about this game. Skull Island: Rise of Kong is nothing more than an extremely feeble attempt to cash out on whatever interest is left in the King Kong franchise. All of this would be hysterical because this whole game just feels like a massive joke, but I know there is at least one person out there who was at least a little bit excited for this game, and I just can't help but feel bad for them. Games this bad are what kills studios. The Saints Row reboot pretty much shut the doors on Volition, and Gollum completely closed down Daedalic Entertainment's development division, shifting the entire company to publishing only. Personally, I don't see Iguanabee surviving this game, especially considering how all of their recent releases have been less than stellar. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, do be sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss another video. And please do let me know what you thought of the video and Rise of Kong in general down in the comments below. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.